listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
And I'm Rachel.
We have yet another wildcard episode for you ladies. We are celebrating Mental Health Month this May in full style here. We're pulling out a lot of the stops. I don't know about all of them. We have to save some of this for next year. But pulling out a lot of stops, we've had conversations about stewardship of the mind and emotions. That was a great wildcard episode. Bree talking about that stuff. We had a great conversation with Lindsay Hausch about anxiety and, social pressure and that kind of stuff. That was also a great conversation with Lindsay. And today we're actually recording this on Armed Forces Day. We have a military spouse as one of our co-hosts, and deployment is a thing that military families have to deal with, and it affects mental health. So today we're talking about surviving deployment, what military family life looks like, all of that kind of stuff. We may be throwing some random questions at Rachel today. So this is going to be a really great episode. Whether or not you are a military family, if you know a military family, this will be a lot of good information on how we can support the military families, either in our congregations or in our families or on the internet, ways you can just support military families because they are important to us in the body of Christ. So, Rachel, take it away.
Yeah, well, you say it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and that is true, but it is also, May is the month of the military spouse. So
yes,
it's a great month to be a military spouse. And this whole episode was sort of inspired by an article that Pastor Roy Askins actually asked me to write for the Lutheran Witness online. And I write a lot for them, and most of my articles are sort of more devotional in nature, but this one was something that we both saw was filled a need in the discourse. And the wonderfully creative title, How the Church Can Support Military Families During Deployment. We tossed around a few other titles, but I finally said, let's just call it what it is.
Yeah.
It is a list of ways in which churches and individual Christians can support military families during deployment. We are actually living through a season of deployment right now, and I'll tell you, there are very few mental health challenges I have faced in my life that are as severe as this. It is on my mind all the time. My son asked me yesterday while we were having a little PE class working out together, and he said, "So, Mom, what's on your mind right now?" I mean, besides Dad.
Oh.
And I was like, "You're right. Every time you ask me what's on my mind, just expect that it's Dad plus." It's Dad plus I need to pay that bill. It's Dad plus we should get on with your long division homework. It's because it is just something that it is in the back of my mind all the time, that this person that I love so much is so out of reach for me right now. And that it leaves me feeling very lonely, very vulnerable, very stretched to my limit. And if you talk with military spouses, nearly all of them, everyone I've ever talked to, will report exactly the same thing, that a season of deployment where your spouse is just off, away, out of reach, out of touch, it really stretches you to the very limits of what you can handle, what you think you can handle. And so it presents an opportunity, a ministry opportunity for churches to realize that these families, military families, we like to think that we're strong. We don't like to ask for help. We are stiff upper lip people. Don't complain about stuff you can't change. Just accept it, take it as it comes, roll with the punches. That's how we do. And yet this deployment thing comes up, and in the world we live in, I was an Army kid back in the 90s, and my dad served for 5 years and never deployed. And that's what I thought military life would be like for us. But it's not that way. In this day, when we have the global war on terror happening, when we have, there's the drawdown in Afghanistan, ongoing, Operation Inherent Freedom, Enduring Resolve, whatever the operation names are. I get them all mixed up. But there are very few military families that don't have to go through this time of months, of time apart. And so, yes, we tend to be very resilient, well-resourced people, but during a deployment season, we need help. And the church is in a unique position to give help at a time that is very, in addition to other kinds of vulnerability, spiritually vulnerable.
Yes.
So I wrote the article as a way to sort of offer some concrete pointers for what kind of help is most appreciated, makes the biggest difference in people's lives. And I had help. Our Lutheran Lounge ladies, you guys came, Lutheran Ladies Lounge ladies. You guys came through in a big way back in December when I put up a thread asking for insights and ideas for this article. So much outpouring of practical wisdom and personal experience. And I was able to, with permission, of course, use some of those words and those stories in my article. And it just made it so much richer. So yeah, that's where this episode has come about. And I'm so honored that we can talk about this together, because I really have a heart for other military families and what we are all going through at regular intervals throughout the lifespan of a military career. Because it's rough, you guys. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Were you surprised at the amount of responses? Like, is having Lutheran sisters in military families something that we kind of overlook? Are they more common than a lot of us even realize?
I think so. It was fun to see, back in December when we first had that conversation, see people come out of the woodwork, not only current military spouses, military service members, but also people who had been part of that life in the past, and still had very fresh memories from it. It is, I think, a larger part of our church community than we normally are aware of. And yeah, it's a significant percentage, I would say, of our church family either is or has been connected to the military. Yeah, definitely. Very surprised and pleased. I got sisters. It's wonderful.
Yes. Let's just jump into the article first. Can you give us, I know we want people to actually go read the article, so you don't have to read the thing verbatim, but
I already have. You can actually listen to this on the Lutheran Witness podcast, word for word. All my articles become audio editions. So if you're not a reader, you can read it that way too.
Yes. We'll link that too, the Lutheran Witness podcast. But what are the highlights of this list of ways that we can help military families? I'm really curious, especially if we don't have military families in our immediate vicinity. I think a lot of us might think, oh, I don't know anybody, so I don't need to be, and not in a bad way. It's just I don't know these people, so it doesn't come to the forefront of my mind to be involved in this.
So a couple of resources I'll just put out there, and I wish that I had done more to highlight these in the article. So you're getting bonus content already.
Yes.
Get in touch with LCMS Ministry to the Armed Forces if this is something that is near to your heart. Yes. Operation Barnabas. Barnabas, of course, was the New Testament saint who was the son of encouragement. And so Operation Barnabas is a ministry of encouragement for service members, LCMS service members. And so they can help you get connected to that. In addition, I believe they also have an Adopt a Chaplain program.
Do they really?
You know what? I got to Google this now. Hang on. I was just reading about this yesterday, but now I'm starting to feel uncertain.
I did not know about this.
Yes, Adopt a Chap. Yes. Where congregations can adopt LCMS chaplains to the armed forces and form a relationship with them, support them in prayer. So if this is, even if you don't have military people in your life, there are ways for you to get connected to this ministry of encouragement to help people who are serving in a very hardcore profession that creates a lot of opportunities for spiritual vulnerability. And they need their Lutheran brothers and sisters supporting them in prayer, holding their hands, helping them navigate the many spiritual challenges that come with a career in the military.
Yeah.
So those two things, there's lots more. Look up LCMS, Ministry to the Armed Forces. We call them MAF, which is fun.
We do.
Sounds like a Muppet name. MAF the Muppet.
A little chaplain Muppet. That would be amazing.
Oh, that would be lovely.
Chaplain MAF.
But the folks who are part of that ministry, all of them are either retired or served long stints in the military themselves. They know this stuff so well, and they have such a heart for it.
And they care so deeply for the people and the people serving in the armed forces, and the importance of spiritual care in that context. Like, they are so passionate about that. And I will say also, as somebody who helps them raise funds every year, like the people who support ministry to the armed forces on an annual basis are some of the most passionate, loving, and generous people that exist in the world.
Yeah, they really are. So get in touch with the MAF people, and you will find good people there and lots of opportunities to be an encourager. But if you have military families already around you, then there are some things that you can do. The first one, and I love this one, is yes, deployment is a uniquely grueling time. Don't wait until deployment to connect with military families. There's this sort of impression that because we move around a lot, and I'm moving again this summer, that it's not maybe the world's greatest investment of your social energy to get really real here.
Yeah. This is a real episode.
to really get close to a military family. Because as soon as your friendship really gets going, you got to say goodbye again. And that stinks. But as a church, what that means on the other side is that when we show up at your church, we are ready to plug in. I mean, not me right now, because honestly, deployment stinks. But by and large, we're ready to plug in. We want to be involved. We know that our time may be short. We want to make the most of every minute that we can be part of your church family, our church family. And so it's a wonderful treasure for the church. And if you are connected with a military family before the deployment time comes, then you're able to help them through that in a way that you would not be if you were just sort of starting to get to know them when they hit this really tough emotional roadblock in their life.
I do have a question, because you had said that sometimes there may be a reticence to really connect with a military family because of, someone might be afraid to get attached. But I think for me personally, I don't know how the whole deployment thing works. Like, is there a way to, like, just as like a civilian, like an outsider, is there a way to just know when that kind of stuff happens? Is it like you just got to read the news and assume, oh, this unrest is happening?
You won't actually read it in the news. Okay. Most deployments there are a few units, the special forces units, etc., who can deploy at the drop of a hat. Most deployments, you can see them coming. For example, I knew this latest deployment, I knew about 3 months in advance.
Okay.
Because they've got to, there's a lot of preparation that takes place in terms of getting your family and financial affairs in order, just in practical terms of making sure you have the gear you need in your sea bag and on the ship.
Yeah.
So it's you can see it coming, and that actually makes it really hard because you really want to make the most of your time together. But it's just, hey, at some point you just look at each other and goes, I wish you would go ahead and leave so we can start looking forward to being back together again, because this dread is awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, most deployments you can see them coming. And if you are in a friendship with a military family, they will probably be venting to you about this pre-deployment stress.
They will tell you.
But they will not tell you exactly when on anything. So that brings up one of the most, probably the beginning of this article was the subtitle number 3 that I used. Number 3, don't ask what they can't tell. If there's nothing else you take out of this article, take that, is that we as Lutherans love to find out about people's lives, and we love to make polite chit-chat. But one of the most painful things, operational security, OPSEC, means that we try very hard as a country interested in its own defense to not be too forthcoming about where our military people are and what they're doing at any given time. So I can say a deployment's coming. I can't say exactly what day the ship is pulling out of the harbor. I can't say when they're getting back. I can't say where exactly they are. I can't say, what exactly they're doing.
Is that something that you know, or do you not even know?
Most of the time I don't know, which is really frustrating because I like to know things.
Right? Yes.
But and what little I do know, I have to be very careful about whether I say anything and to whom. And so when people ask those innocent little questions, it puts me in a really awkward position.
Still a jab.
I don't know. And if I did know, I couldn't tell you, I'd have to kill you,
Yeah.
So if you are able in your conversations to frame them in a way where you express your concern and your interest without asking for uncomfortable specifics, that is just the kindest thing for someone who feels that social awkwardness of the whole situation. Because I know it comes from a place of love. I know that you're not a Russian spy trying to figure out, exactly what's happening with U.S. military defense. I do know that. But if you can get the message out that OPSEC is just, it makes everything harder, because I want to share that with you. I want to know everything, and I want to share it. It's, as the spouse at home, I see myself partly as the family information officer, sharing what I can with the people that can receive it. So it's very painful not to be able to tell the whole story. So yeah, but deployments, you usually see them coming. Depending on the service branch, they last anywhere from, 4 to 6 months up to a year or more. And they usually come up every few years. So it's everybody goes through it. And when you're going through it, it really is awful. There's no other way around it. But once they come back, then the joy is so intense, you usually forget some of the suffering. At least I hope so.
I cry at the videos on social media when the spouse, the military deployed spouse, comes back and they surprise their kids and wife and dogs, and I just fall.
I'm sorry.
The emotions.
Yeah.
And I feel I've never gone through that, but I can only imagine the heart bursting emotion that happens when your spouse comes back.
None of it's made up. It's all there. I tried to film our reunion last August when he came back from his previous deployment, and I've got it's the silliest little video. It's just me filming, and you see him walking towards us, and then all of a sudden all you can still hear a little bit, but it's totally, like, you can tell that the phone was crushed.
Chaotic joy.
So it's the exact opposite of those really nice, beautiful, polished videos that turn up on social media. We would not end up in the evening news with that one.
You gotta get an outsider friend to like come and film who has a little distance from it, who can just be like, I'll focus on getting the good angles. You guys can just focus on your reunion.
Embracing.
Exactly.
Right.
Touching bodies.
Another thing I really wanna highlight is that while the most obvious ways to help are to be there for the military spouse, for the family that are left behind, because they are going to have needs, you know, whether it's childcare because you're a solo parent, whether it's someone put their name on the emergency contact form, because all my family are not here. Right. And so sometimes it's kind of ludicrous, the area codes that go on my emergency contacts. If I had somebody who was willing and who I trusted to put as that person that I could call in the middle of the night if I have to take one of my kids to the ER, like, being that person is great. I live on base, and that was intentional because I needed around-the-clock maintenance crew with my husband gone.
Right.
But a lot of people don't. And if they don't have that handy person, and not that the spouses left behind aren't handy, but we all have our areas of expertise.
Right.
I'm very good at some things. I'm not good at things like changing my windshield wipers. I'm learning. Fair. I have learned how to grill. That's something I never did before. And deployed. Going months without grilled meats was not an option. So I found new depths of strength in myself. Last 2 years ago, when Ken was, and this wasn't a full deployment, but when he was at chaplain school and I was having to sell a house on my own, one of our wonderful brothers in Christ at our church at Hope High Ridge, he is a handyman and also a military veteran. And he came over and helped me with that list of things that the inspector was going to be looking for on the house. And that was so amazing. I don't know what I would have done without him. You know, just being there and serving. And he saw it as giving to Christ, and it absolutely was, because many prayers of thanks said for that service. So yeah, there are many ways to help the families that are left behind. But one of the ways you can help is simply to help encourage the service member who's out there. And this usually takes the form of snail mail. I say snail mail because, yes, most of the time these days, thank goodness we're not living in a previous time, the deployed service member will have access to email. But they don't have very reliable access to email. And they don't have a whole lot of time in which to spend on email. And so as a selfish person, I don't like to give out that email address because I want all of that email time to be spent on me.
I love it. Boundaries.
However, there's more than one way to encourage a person. And so I will give out the FPO address to anyone who asks for it, because encouraging someone who is going through that crucible of deployment, it requires more than just one person. I can't, if it were just me, I would really struggle. But I know that there are other people who are sending him letters, sending him packages. There are churches who have adopted my chap. And
I love it.
And he gets that boost of encouragement every time he hears from people in the body of Christ. So I put FPO address in the article. I realized after the fact that I was being incomplete. FPO stands for Fleet Post Office. Sorry, Army folks, which have an APO. Army Post Office.
All the acronyms. It's just a life of acronyms.
Many acronyms. It just means a special address that you can reach them via while they're on deployment. You won't know exactly where it is, but it will get to them eventually, think 4 to 6 weeks. And with the post office being what it's been lately, think 6 weeks. But anytime you are able to just pop a note, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have a fancy care package full of home baked goodies, which will be like powder when they get there in 6 weeks anyway. Even just a note of encouragement says, hey, brother, hey, sister, I'm thinking of you. I'm praying for you. Here's a verse that I read today that made me think of you and your experience. God bless you. Like that's all it takes. 5 minutes start to mailbox, and you can be that encouragement. One of the quotes I put in the article that just floored me when I read it, and this was from a Lutheran lady service member. She said, I would have liked to have gotten mail when I was deployed. Any mail.
Wow.
It was rough.
Sad. Wow.
And I really, thank God for her honesty and her vulnerability, because it really it sent home for me. I think I put a letter in the mail that day.
Yeah.
when I reread that quote, because there's something special about receiving mail, and it's a uniquely potent pick-me-up. So, encourage the family at home, help them out, make sure that even if they don't ask for help, because spoiler alert, we won't ask for help, that you are there to offer it, and maybe even sometimes force it on them. Sorry, I've got my head in my hand right now thinking, why are we like this?
Human nature.
Human nature. There's a special pride that comes from gutting it out when you don't have to.
Well, I noticed in the article you talked about sometimes it's good to have help be aggressive. And I'm always somewhat reluctant. I'm like, if I tend to be more of the let me feel this person out. And if they're giving me strong impressions that they got it done, then I'm going to take them at their word. And so, yeah, I guess I don't know. That was just a different perspective, I guess, for me, thinking about how to interpret that. But then I also think about other people where, like, somebody who's just had a baby. And I'm like, okay, well, they say it's okay. I'm going to believe them. But maybe sometimes it's like, yeah, I know it's okay. I'm still going to do this for you.
Yes. Very similar to that sort of short-term vulnerability that makes you very hesitant to ask for help. And I was so glad for our Lutheran ladies who reinforced this idea of the aggressive help, because it is very much against my nature too. So I needed their perspective to remind me that this is something I should just remember to mention. There was one line in the article that sort of summarized my existence more than any other, and that is, some spouses and families turn inward and like to be left alone during deployment. That's me. Which is ironic that I'm writing all these ways for people to be aggressively helpful. But the other thing is, others shrivel up from loneliness and lack of daily adult interaction and feel completely helpless and overwhelmed at every new crisis. So realize it's good to realize that there are varieties of military families, just as there are varieties of people. But I was really glad for the voices of those other women to say, yeah, I was ashamed to ask for help, but when somebody just brought it over and left it on my doorstep, I was crying. I was so grateful because I really needed that.
Yeah.
And just because I tend to get very introspective. We talked about this before, curved in on myself during this season. I just like to gut it out, honestly. That I realized that maybe that isn't necessarily the healthiest always, and that other people aren't necessarily like me. Some people just, I like sitting on the back deck reading a book. Other people that just gets very, very painfully lonely and empty, and they need someone to show up and say, hey, you want to grab a cup of coffee? Because that is what they need, and that's what they love and crave, and they don't get it really. Not in the same way.
Yeah. Well, and I think just from listening to you share these stories and some understanding of, I don't know, mental health and just human nature in general, if you need to ask for help for something, that means that you have to consider your circumstances and feel the pain that and the emptiness and that void that is causing you to have to ask for help. And so if you just don't, you don't have to go there if you don't ask for help. It's just, you can kind of just leave that. And it's like a coping mechanism. Like if I don't have to ask for help, I don't feel that pain. I don't have to recognize that that void is there. If someone just brings it on you, you're like, oh, hey, yes, like I needed this and you filled this void, but I didn't have to like go through the painful part of it. I don't know. And that's not like a dig on anybody. It's just kind of the reality of human nature in life and how we cope with things that are painful. Like it's hard. And me as a civilian, there's things I can recognize my own skills and things that I am able to do for people and recognize where other people have those voids and maybe don't want to have to face that void and just be able to reach out and walk alongside our brothers and sisters.
Yeah. There's this list of items that just as they sort of fall apart that I'm wondering, well, do I just wait till he gets back? Or do I see if I can find someone to fix this? Or do I learn how to fix it myself? I learned how to change the string on the string trimmer. And then I learned it again because I forgot. And I'm not very good at it. But there is Sarah, you'll love this. One of my kids' bikes got a terrible flat. And I couldn't find the right tool to fix it when I started to fix it. And so it's been a month with the bike sitting upside down on its handlebars.
He's not loving that.
Video call me. I can help you with this.
I know technically how to do it, but
this is my thing, man. I know bikes.
I know. Okay, all right. We'll have a chat sometime soon. But this is an example of the kind of thing where I'm like, well, the child will technically survive another couple of months until dad gets back, and he'll probably have it fixed in like 5 minutes because he's really good with stuff like that. And if I do it, it's going to be 2 hours of me pulling my hair out on the video chat with Sarah while she's rolling her eyes at how inept I am at this bike repair thing.
I don't roll my eyes at people who don't know bikes. I will teach. I will teach internally.
Women. Like she's got the genetic condition where you can't roll your eyes or roll your tongue? You can't roll her eyes, whether it's genetic condition or she just won't.
Yeah. So there's this whole list of things, everything from bike repair to bad habits the kids have developed that I just don't have the willpower or strength to get.
So you gave yourself permission to fail
with. Yes, I give myself permission to fail, or at least fail because I know that when he walks in that door with his great booming voice, they're just going to be scared out of their socks, and suddenly all these behavioral problems, because it happened last time. Oh my goodness.
Hey,
kids! And suddenly they're not like sneaking bowls of cereal into their bedrooms anymore. I don't know why it works that way.
1-800 anti-B. That's all I gotta tell you.
Oh my goodness.
That's my line. Direct line.
Okay, and if you have not heard Ken's voice, go to kfuo.org/oratio. This is partially a program plug and partially in jest, but go to kfuo.org/oratio and just, that's ORATIO for those of you who don't know how to spell that in Latin, and just listen to Ken's voice and you will understand what Rachel is talking about.
I dare you to not be afraid of what would happen if this voice got mad at you.
We've that's always been like discipline. The ultimate discipline is to have dad boom at you, but dad's booming voice is gone and mom's voice is a little paltry by comparison. Like it does not have the magic. So yeah, and we all miss him. It's like every day someone will say, I miss dad. I wish dad were here. Do you miss dad, mom? Yes, I miss dad. It never goes away. And I guess it probably shouldn't because because we love him and we want him back. Mm-hmm. But it's our daily life right now for a season. For a season that keeps feeling like it stretch on forever and ever. Mm-hmm.
Which is one of the sort of unique things that the military, there is that somewhat ambiguous, fluctuating nature of it. So, yes, you expect to be able to plan for this, it's coming, but then maybe sometimes it can change what your expectations were. And so you've been planning all along. And that's sort of a unique, I mean, and all of us have this, of course, none of our lives are so rigidly organized that, you don't get those curveballs. But deployment, when those sort of things change midway, that's just, I can see how that would just be an extra compounding exponential sort of factor.
And they do that. We have several times during a deployment gotten that awful word. I said I would be back around this time. It's not going to be around this time. It's going to be some other time, and I don't know when exactly. I will be back. I will be back. But this sort of soft date that you had in your mind, that's not doable anymore. And that uncertainty, I like to plan 10 moves in advance all the time. And 10. I can't do that. Or if I do that, I'm constantly readjusting. We said that your PCS that's coming up in just a couple of months, we've been telling you for a year that it would be this place. That's not going to happen anymore. We don't know exactly where it is, but we know that it won't be this place.
PCS, Rachel.
Oh, sorry. PCS. Permanent Change of Station. It is the official name for all those moves, pack up your life and go to a different place moves that military families have to do.
So it's permanent with quotation marks?
Oh, permanent as in from here until we give you someplace else.
Permanent change. That's like the oxymoron of oxymoron.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah. No, you're right. There's an irony in that permanent change of station.
Oh my god.
We know going in that it's only going to be for a couple of years.
It's a temporary permanent change.
A temporary firmness or something like that instead of a permanent change.
Oh my those kinds of curveballs are just the way you live your life if you are associated with the United States military. And I guess for good reason, because the needs of our country's national defense, they change on a daily, on a weekly basis. And our forces have to be ready to adjust, to adapt. Yes, I would say that some of that uncertainty is probably not necessary strictly, that you could run a military perfectly well without a little bit of it. But you couldn't. I mean, you've got to be able to pivot if you're going to be effective at fulfilling the mission of defending this country against all threats to its well-being. And but that doesn't mean I like it. Yeah, I don't like it.
I wouldn't.
Okay. Yeah.
No one blames you.
No. Nobody.
It's one of the aspects of service that I think we often underestimate, and I think this happens to an extent with missionary service as well, is that you've got the service member, and people have a clearer idea in their mind of what sort of sacrifices they might be making or they might be willing to make. But it's the next level out, which isn't even a far level, is their family. And I think people often forget about the real sacrifices that spouses and children, and then you go further out and you get to, parents and siblings and the willingness that, you're being asked to give up that time with them and to put all of that on hold and sacrifice that for this other cause, for the sake of, some of it is ambiguous, but some of it is for the sake of my safety.
Right.
It's something that I think we often don't follow it through in the church when we're thinking about the support that we're giving to those sort of endeavors. It's easy to think about that first sort of the missionary that's going into that place, because that's what I have the most experience with, or the actual serviceman who's going into that place. But then all the things that are attached with them being able to actually do that, those are the trickier things that don't get as much attention, but we have the opportunity and the calling to serve that, because those sort of things are what make it possible for that work and that ministry in the cases of chaplains to actually be able to happen, is to, if their families are able to actually serve and not completely fall apart, then they can be like, okay, yes, Lord, you've called me to this, I can do that. But if their family is completely fallen apart, that's going to start giving them pause. Should they actually consider, is God actually calling them to continue in this vocation if it means that their family is completely disintegrating? Maybe they need to be looking at another calling, because you got to weigh those two things together. And so if we can support the one, it enables the other to continue.
Exactly. You're right. The parallel between missionary service and missionaries are sort of like the service members of the church, going out into the world to do that work. Even when it comes to the military, even though only one person may wear the uniform, the whole family serves. You're right. If everything falls apart, it does directly impact the service member's ability to be ready and resilient and able to fulfill the mission. There's this old trope where the person in the trenches gets the Dear John letter from back home of like, I can't do this anymore. And you better believe that affects their morale and their ability to do their job. So one of the things that I am called to do as a military spouse is to be that encourager. I try to be very honest and open with my husband about the challenges we face, but I always try to put such a spin on it that it won't, won't completely crush his soul to think about what we're going through back here. Because every sailor on the ship with him needs him to have something left for them. Right. He can't spend all his compassion on me. They need his compassion. They need his heart to be with them. And so one of my jobs is to suck it up and make sure that the home front stays together well enough that he can keep his gaze focused on, the men and women who are serving with him on the ship, who are going through so many challenges, who need the gospel of Jesus Christ, the love of God, to sustain them every day. And he's got to be that for them as a chaplain.
Yeah.
So, which it's tough to think that even though he's all mine, he's not all mine. And I know that's true in every marriage and every family situation, but deployment has this painful way, as it does in so many other ways, of driving that truth home. Like we talked about with our Lutheran Ladies Book Club pick, Till We Have Faces, that that loving somebody doesn't mean possessing them, that they can love you fully and belong to something else, somebody else. And they do. We belong to Christ.
I have a somewhat unrelated question, but I'm curious, and you can answer this as fully or as not fully as you are willing and able. What does Ken actually do? We talk about him being a chaplain. We talk about him being on a ship, but I don't think we ever actually tell people what he actually does, because he does get to do some pretty cool stuff too as he's deployed.
He does.
I mean, you can't probably answer all of that
directly related to his work, but it was fun once when we got one of our rare phone conversations. He got to mention that he'd gone on a helicopter ride the day before with one of his folks. And so there's a few fun things. Oh, this one was one of his favorite memories from last year's deployment, was because he was on an aircraft carrier. They do swim calls where you jump off the end of the aircraft carrier, which is like many stories high, and into the water. There are videos. Look up.
Wow.
Google, YouTube, Navy carrier swim calls, whatever. And then they basically jump off one end and get to swim and play in the water all the way down to the other end. It's not all like that. Like, that's a very rare treat. It's a swim call. But most of what he does, and again, he doesn't come home and be like, hey, sweetie, this is what I did with my day.
Right.
We don't have that. That's not how we do. But putting together, there's a mixture of sort of basic administrative meetings and duties that are involved with just anyone who's part of the officer corps. In addition, he helps lead and also facilitate worship services, not only LCMS, but he'll also make sure that anybody on the ship who has a faith that they're trying to uphold during this deployment can have whatever resources and access they need to that. So there's some more admin work, but there's some of the basic pastor planning worship services and Bible studies and that sort of thing. So there's some of that, and there's a lot of counseling. Mm-hmm. People who need to just talk with somebody. And yes, there are also mental health professionals on the ship, but a chaplain is unique because of the confessional seal that, unlike with some other mental health professionals, what you share with a chaplain ends there, because the United States military respects the office of confessor. Yeah. And that makes the chaplain a very special person in any unit, because it means that they are completely a safe space. And so, yeah, there's a lot of counseling. And then what's called deck plate ministry, which Bree would love this. Basically, it just means walking around, talking to people, making sure they know you're there and where to find you, and checking in on them and seeing how their day is going, getting to know them. And that's kind of a nebulous kind of thing. It doesn't sound like, it sounds like just sort of visiting. But it's a really, really potent tool in the chaplain's toolkit to be able to just be there with the people. Mm-hmm. And they know that you'll be popping in now and again just to say hi. And that then you've got that basic relationship, so that when someone is going through something, a spiritual crisis, they know where to find you and that you care about them. And then you're able to build conversations off of those one-off, friendly, informal interactions. Mm-hmm. So it's a really cool calling. And on behalf of my friends at MAF, I will say, if there are any pastor families out there who are, maybe feeling interest in that, call them up, because it's a very uniquely painful and uniquely rewarding way to do ministry.
Yeah, we've had lots of conversations with the MAF guys on the coffee hour about the stories that they hear from chaplains about the really good stuff and the really painful stuff, and how incredibly crucial the role of a chaplain is with these service members, a role that nobody else can fill, because I mean, just the stuff that you're saying, a chaplain is very uniquely trained to be that person to these service members.
Well, and here's one example of this, this ability to advocate on behalf of people of religious conviction. And it's kind of, this was actually published in an article last year. It was really fun to find. But as LCMS Lutherans, we of course hold our own confession very closely. Mm-hmm. And so the idea of supporting other people in their potentially wrong confession is something that chaplains have to sort of work around. But I was very proud of the work that Ken did last year as an advocate with Muslim sailors who needed some help explaining to their commanding officers what was required of them by their faith during Ramadan, and helping to negotiate some accommodations for that so that they would be able to fulfill their religious obligations during that time. And having a chaplain, someone who is able to stand by your side and explain, this is something that their faith requires of them, and we can't let it endanger the mission. But if we can find a way to accomplish both goals, that'd be great. And as a Lutheran mom, if one of my kids was serving in the military, I would want that kind of advocate for them, even if it was a Muslim chaplain, to be able to say, yes, this is a serious thing, that this service member needs access to whatever. To have someone say, it's been 6 months since they've taken communion. We need to find an LCMS chaplain so that they can receive communion. And no, a Presbyterian chaplain won't do. Yeah. To have that level of understanding and advocacy, to have someone in your corner to make sure that you get the nourishment that you need spiritually while you're in this really tough situation.
Yeah. So I will say on that, I mean, this is part of when we talk about religious freedom in our American culture, American values, that does mean religious freedom. And that means that we believe in the freedom to practice for everybody. And that, that includes people that we don't necessarily agree with their beliefs, but we believe in their freedom to practice. And that extends to our military service members, and especially on these ships, because this is a morale thing too. We want our people to be able to practice their religion. And maybe we should also clarify that, as a Lutheran chaplain, he practices LCMS services. He does not, venture into any of the what is it, unionism?
There's no syncretism, and it's a fine line to walk sometimes. But he sees a difference between leading worship and facilitating other people's access to worship,
right?
And all the LCMS tenets, closed communion and the like, are respected and observed, which is really great, honestly. And not every command is as great about this, but most of them are. And our MAF guys, to keep coming back to them, they've got our back. That he can say, my endorser, that's what you call the church body that provides you your endorsement for ministry, these are their ground rules. I didn't make them up. And if I don't observe them, I could get my endorsement pulled. So to know that you've got a church body that knows what it believes and stands on its convictions, and that they've got your back, that gives you the confidence and the strength to be who you are, and not to feel the same pressure to compromise, which I'm really grateful for, having the Ministry to the Armed Forces team supporting my husband as he does his unique ministry.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts, Rachel, as we wrap this up? I know we've kind of gone down a lot of tangents.
I just want to say thank you for listening. My status as a military spouse comes up a lot on this podcast, but rarely do we ever dig into it. And I really appreciate the opportunity to just speak about what we're going through and what it's like, not just for me, but for everybody else who's literally in the same boat.
Yeah, that's right.
You got it, homie.
So, thank you. Thank you for listening and for saying that this is a topic worth talking about.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
It's amazing.
Yes.
You guys are the best.
We're wrapping you in a really big virtual hug right now. I'm wrapping my arms around my microphone.
We are the children.
So I want to plug the article and the podcast. You can find those at witness.lcms.org. The Lutheran Witness podcast is at kfuo.org/witness. You can find all of the audio stuff. All of the rest of Rachel's audio editions of her articles are all there. There's some really great stuff. We didn't cover the whole article. So if you've listened to this podcast, you should also go read the article, because there's other stuff in there, including if you would like to send a care package, there's a list of do's and don'ts for things you should and should not put in a care package. So you can find that list there, witness.lcms.org. Great stuff. Happy month of the military spouse.
Yes.
To everyone. Happy Armed Forces Day, which by the time this drops, it'll be 2 weeks ago. But today is Armed Forces Day. So happy Armed Forces Day. Also, I believe this will be dropping on Memorial Day weekend. So happy Memorial Day to everyone as well. Join us in our group in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge. We've already had some of a discussion on military life, but we'd love to have more discussion on military life, your thoughts, your feelings. If you missed the first discussion, if you're a new member and didn't see that one, we can surely talk about it even more, sharing this community, building up this community of military families. We are very happy to do that in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge on Facebook. Also, you can share your thoughts on Instagram. You can find us at Lutheran Ladies Lounge on Instagram. Share your thoughts in a story and tag us, and we'll share it on our Instagram as well. You can find all of our podcasts at kfuo.org/Lutheran Ladies Lounge, or on your favorite podcasting app, or on our KFUO radio app as well. You're listening to the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast. I'm Sarah.
I'm Erin.
I'm Bree.
And I am so over this deployment, you guys. I can't even. Can't even.
Views and opinions expressed on the Lutheran Ladies Lounge podcast may not represent the official position of the management or ownership of KFUO Radio, the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. The Lutheran Ladies Lounge is produced by KFUO Radio and available at kfuo.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Join our community on Facebook in the Lutheran Ladies Lounge.
Words are really hard right now, guys.
Mm-hmm.